started playing. And right about the time that was getting serious, I found out about my eye condition, my diagnosis. And I think in that moment, I know actually, God spoke to me, and it was sort of a realization of, you've been met with this challenge, but here's something that you'll never be hindered by your vision to do, and that's to play and sing. And so I just continued to try to find new ways to make it work. But the art has inspired that, and I wrote my first song when I was probably 16, and I just remember the high that I got from that. And then hearing my first song played by a band, and then hearing my first song recorded, and then hearing my first song on the radio, you know, like all those things. It never gets old, you know.
Welcome to Curious Goldfish, a podcast community where music and curiosity come together through interesting conversations with the music makers of our world. I'm your host,
Welcome to Curious
Jason
Goldfish,
English.
a podcast.
You can find Curious Goldfish
music and
in
curiosity
all the major
come
podcast and social media
interesting
platforms.
conversations with the
And
music
of course,
makers of our
we have
world.
all of our content
I'm your
on our
host,
website,
Jason English.
Curious Goldfish.
You can find Curious
.com.
Goldfish
in all the major podcast and social media platforms. And of course, we have all of our content on our website, curiousgoldfish.com. My conversation with singer-songwriter Wyatt Edmondson ended up being a 2-act play, and I hope you find each equally interesting and educational. The first 20 minutes or so, we go deep on the business of being an independent musician. In preparing for the interview and through this conversation, I'm extremely impressed by Wyatt's approach to generating revenue for himself. Many artists aren't as disciplined as he is, and I think you'll be surprised by his creativity and tenacity. He knows how to hustle. The second part is centered around his music and how his visual impairment fueled his pursuit of a career in music. You can't help but admire his intentional focus on making good art that will have a positive impact on our culture. Wyatt wraps us up with 2 live songs, one called Shelter off of his 2023 album, and the other is an unreleased song he co-wrote with Sarah Peacock. Here's Alabama fan and current Nashville resident Wyatt Edmondson. Let's dive in. Wyatt, thanks for joining.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
We're in Florida. It's the middle of January. We're here for 30A Songwriters Festival. You've been here before, right?
Yes, actually, this is my 7th year here.
7th.
Yeah, I got in really early when I was still in college, and I mean, I've literally grown up with this festival. It's seen me, and I've seen it change in so many ways, and I've experienced a lot of growth as a result of being involved with Russell Carter and just the 30A Fest and some of the other things that he's put on, and it's just allowed me a lot of great opportunities, so I'm very thankful.
Yeah, what about it has enabled that growth?
I think mostly it's connections, getting to mingle with some of the other artists, and also getting to know the people with Russell Carter Artist Management, and some of the other opportunities that have come out of this, like other songwriters festivals that, you know, I get to slap 30A Fest on my resume, and then that allows me to get into some other opportunities as well, some other festivals. This past year, Russell had me be a part of the 30A Songwriters Festival showcase at Americana Fest in Nashville. I've been writing songs with some of the really accomplished songwriters that frequent this festival, like Jeffrey Steele, Adam Hood, and plenty of others. And those are all people that I've met at these types of events. So,
That's amazing. That's good. In terms of festivals, a question I like to ask folks, if you had the responsibility of putting on an evening at a music festival and you had 4 acts to fill in the lineup, who would you put it on the card?
What's my budget?
It's unlimited, and it doesn't have to be the same genre. Like it's Wyatt's show.
Do they all have to be alive still?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let's bring up Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and maybe resurrect Jimi Hendrix from the dead, and then we'll have Bob Marley finish it off. Those are some of my absolute favorites, and I would be front and center the whole time. I would not do anything but enjoy the music, so it probably would be pretty unorganized.
Hey, man, that would be a hell of a festival. I wonder how much the merch would go for that.
I don't know. You could put all their faces on the same shirt. I would wear it every day.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's all right. Good answer. That was
Thanks,
good.
Man.
That was good. So one thing that I'm curious about, I'm not part of the music industry, but you're an independent artist.
Right.
You're basically an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Managing a business day to day. I guess, can you walk us through some of the details around, how do you generate the top line revenue? When you wake up every day, it's like you have to worry about your art or you as an artist, but then it's like you've got to also pay the bills.
Sure. Yeah.
So can you walk us through what that looks like from a revenue perspective first?
I'll start by saying that it's a constant journey. You're constantly revamping and rethinking your business model. That's definitely been the case for me over the past 7 years that I've lived in Nashville. I always tell people, if you're thinking about doing music professionally, but you're on the fence about jumping in full time because you want the steady support and foundation of a day job. I'm not saying that having a day job is a problem. There's a lot of people who are really successful in music who also still have like a weekly day job that they kind of use to be the foundation of their financial situation. But that was never the case for me. I always was of the mindset that you just have to jump in head first and then just start swimming and see what works. And I think for most musicians, whether you're really trying to be an artist or if you're really trying to be more behind the scenes, if you can play live, I think that's the easiest way to get the ball rolling and to start supporting yourself. And I'll just give you a little background on how my model has changed over the years. I mean, when I first moved to Nashville, I pretty much didn't live there. I mean, I paid rent there, but
Right.
I was in a van and we were going 5 days a week playing around the Southeast and sometimes even further beyond that. And bars, coffee shops, small venues, things like that. And that was before I really knew much about like royalties or any other like commission-based work you could do. And so I was really paying the bills doing that, but it was not near as lucrative as I was thinking it was, because not only was I young and not really financially responsible, but I was kind of living above my means a little bit. And I think a lot of artists struggle with that because you have to have this, I don't want to say image, but you really just have to be comfortable, and sometimes that requires you to put a little bit more on a credit card than you're supposed to. And I found myself, when COVID hit, I'd been in Nashville for, I guess, almost 4 years, but I really hadn't been there much. And I found myself suddenly, all my tour dates were gone. I was locked up in the house, and I came to two conclusions. The first conclusion was I don't have any other streams of income besides performing live, and that's a problem. And then the second one was I don't have enough friends in this town. I feel like I don't really live here. So I made those big changes. One of the big changes I made was I started touring less, and I started performing more regularly around Nashville. And a lot of that consisted of playing like on Lower Broadway. I had to start playing more cover songs, but I would also pick the right shifts during the day to where it was like, I typically play in the afternoon. And so you can really do whatever you want. I mean, I started out just doing what I thought people wanted, but then I quickly started making it my own experience and marketing myself down there as a musician or as a songwriter, I should say, and saw a lot of success with that. So now that's a big part of my income stream. Some, regular, what I would call residency gigs around Nashville, like I said, down on Broadway in the afternoon hours. That's very much a stream of income for me. And then I stumbled into, like I mentioned, sort of commission-based work, particularly writing songs and getting paid up front for doing it. I'm going to give a shout out to a company that kind of changed my situation called Songfinch.
Oh, cool.
And they reached out to me. It was, I guess, in 2021. Those years kind of run together for me. But I think they reached out to me in 2021, and they found me on Spotify. They'd heard some of my music. And basically what they do is they run a company that does customized songs to the customer that they can essentially use as maybe a gift for a spouse, or maybe to memorialize an experience, or even if they maybe just have an idea for a song that they have always wanted to see, manifest and into an actual song, and have someone who that's their job put it together. And so I started to get into that, and at first I was a little bit turned off because I was like, I don't know if I really want to write like Dave and Julie's love story. But I ended up really getting into it,
That's
and then
amazing.
and then it ended up paying very well.
That's
and
amazing.
then that was the part where it was like, okay, this is a serious part of my business at this point. And so I still work with Songfinch. I do some stuff outside of them as well. In 2022, I think I wrote like over 600 custom songs.
What?
Yeah, man.
600.
Yeah, and so those are really that's a cool business model and a cool like boost to my whole situation, because I mean, first off, I can do it from anywhere. I'm actually going to go after this podcast and work on one. So, and that'll be a little bit of money that I'll make today before I go and perform tonight, and so
I have so many questions. Can I
yeah,
ask a
jump
couple?
in. Sorry.
No, you're good. So what's the mindset in the process? Because obviously, like, my assumption is as a songwriter, you're inspired by family stories, heartbreak, personal experiences, all these things that you're observing and experiencing.
Uh-huh.
Is it the same thing for Jim and Julie? That do you have any idea what their story is and their background, or do you have to kind of like in your mind make up a scenario?
No, so I mean, it's actually really streamlined, and it gives the customer an opportunity to provide me with a lot of helpful information and sort of give me a...
So you're fed nuggets of...
Yeah, I mean, they
okay.
sort of give me a roadmap, but I'm free to take whichever way I want to go. There's a finish, there's an ending point on the map, but I can choose how I want to get there. And it's really fun, and actually
incredible.
I think it's really attributed to my ability as a songwriter for my own music, particularly just making me a faster writer, because it's just more constantly flowing ideas, and so I have nothing but good things to say about it.
Yeah. Is there a formula that you've kind of developed?
The more I study songwriting, the more I put emphasis on the chorus, because I think at the end of the day, that is the point which we're trying to have an arrival, But if the journey to get there isn't good, that's a problem. And if the arrival is good, or excuse me, if the arrival isn't worth the journey, that's a problem. And so it's really important to make that arrival moment worth that journey, So I put a lot of focus, at least over the past year. I'm still a growing and developing songwriter, but over the past year, I've put so much emphasis into making sure that journey was worth it by having a chorus that is going to be something people are going to be like.
Have you ever written a song for Jim and Julie that you wish, damn, I wish it was mine on my album, or, part of my portfolio?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, and I do own the rights to the song.
Oh, so you own the rights. Perfect.
So I actually did record a song on my most recent album that I wrote for someone, and it was for this guy out of Wyoming, and it's called The Code of the West. And so it was basically, I talked to him for 40. It wasn't through Songfinch, but it was through something called the American Song, and it's very similar. But
Interesting.
I talked to him on a Zoom call for about 45 minutes about his life, and came up with the song and wrote it, and had to give it to him in a day. So it was like it was a single session write, a very stream of consciousness. But I ended up loving it, and I was like, I'm going to put this on my record. And so we did.
That's amazing. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I learned something here. Okay, cool. So I guess I have a question back to like the gigs in Nashville.
Yeah.
Maybe a dumb question, but if you go and play at a coffee shop, does the coffee shop give you any kind of fee, or is it all tips?
Well, it's mostly the bars, and yes, they do have base pays. I'm actually writing a book on this right now.
Oh, cool.
So I'm writing a little ebook that I'm hoping to put out in the next year. That's going to basically be a roadmap for people who want to do what I'm doing. But yeah, they offer base pays that I would say on the low end are around $75, and it goes as high as $300. And then you get tips down there, which can range. If you're good at what you do, I would say 100 plus in tips generally. And also, it's not uncommon for people to do more than one shift in a day down there, which most vocal coaches would tell you is a very bad idea. But
Right.
if you know how to pace yourself, I mean, it's a good living, and it's really inspiring because you get to be around these just amazing players. The guy who gets off the bar stool and you're up next, he's amazing, and he's got a publishing deal, and I've seen guys very quickly get signed to record labels, who've been down there for a couple of years honing their craft, and then when the timing's right, they just launch. So I'm very lucky, and I'm not at all ashamed to say that I'm down there, because sometimes when you move to Nashville, some people are like, oh, Broadway, that's where musicians go to give up their dreams.
Right.
No, that's where you go to hone your craft, in my opinion.
So the live music and taverns and such with the fees and then the tips, the commission-based stuff, and then there's merchandise probably?
Oh,
right?
yeah. I sell CDs and vinyl down there. I'm always getting people to sign up for my email list down there. I mean, you're basically touring without having to travel, because tourists come from all over the world to come see music on Broadway. I'll have people from all of the 50 states, people from Europe, people from even further than that, who connect with my music. And then if I go out on tour, I've had them come and buy tickets to shows, and so it's a cool way to build up an audience, kind of in a grassroots approach.
That's awesome. What kind of surprises me is I think some artists, when they're playing taverns, doing their thing, and it's covers probably sprinkled with originals, right?
Yep.
They actually sort of assume that, like, hey, I'm up here on stage, I'm doing my thing, tips are going to come, and the folks are just going to know to Venmo me or you buy the T-shirt. There's not a lot of active marketing, and I'm like, you guys are missing a huge opportunity here.
Yeah, I think the best way to do it is to do it subtle but intentionally. I have plenty of little one-liners that I'll say on stage that are, whether or not people realize it, prompts.
Yeah, you're nudging them.
Yeah. And I've gotten it down to a science, and it's all genuine. I think that's the most important thing. You're not up there like a angry monkey with a tip jar going, give me money. I mean, it's never going to work. It's about the art, but people who are connected to you will always make it worth your while.
Yeah. This podcast is a sort of a passion project. I have a full-time job. I'm in corporate world, technology, and sales, and it's pretty common sort of mindset and framework to say, like, the cost of acquiring a new customer is so much greater than an existing customer, right?
Sure.
So it's like, once you get a customer in, you nurture them, you retain them, you try to upsell them, because you've got the access and the relationship. I would assume it's the same thing for an artist.
It is. I think what you just touched on is most notably demonstrated in an email list, because social media, we're not in control anymore because of the algorithm. I mean, most of artists who post on social media, like, let's say you have 10,000 Instagram followers. Well, if you make a post, only about 500 of those followers are actually going to see that post most of the time, and then only about 300 of them are actually going to actively engage with that post. So, I mean, 10,000 people who you've met who like your music, only 300 of them are really going to get something out of a content piece.
That's crazy.
In an email, if you got 10,000 email list subscribers, that email is going to go to every single one of their inboxes. Now, I'm not saying they're all going to open it and interact with it, but it's a much higher percentage. I think it's like social media is about 5%. I think email in the music business is around 28%.
Yeah.
So it's a much better conversion. And with my email list, I try to have fun. I try to give more than I ask. And I try to make sure that the people who are on my list are really getting something out of it. But at the same time, if I roll out a new merch item and I send out an email, I get a lot of people who buy it because they like what I do, and they also like the shirt or the hat, you know? And it's much easier to get their attention that way.
Is merch, is that where the profit margin is the best?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about profit margin, I think CDs are actually where it's at.
Are people still buying the CDs?
Yeah, especially if you sign it. I always joke with people. I'll tell you this, like, one thing I did for my album that came out last year was the first 200 copies I numbered and signed. And so people really latched on to that. I mean, that increases the value right there. If you've got copy number 5 and it's signed, that's unique.
Yeah, that's neat.
And so that increases the value, and it doesn't cost me anything but my time.
Yeah.
I sold out of those first 200 copies in about a month because of that. And then once I stopped numbering them, the sales slowed down a little bit, but they were still signing them. And I always joke with people at shows. I'm like, if you don't have a CD player anymore, this thing doubles nicely as a drink coaster,
Right.
and they laugh and then they buy it,
Well, I know the whole vinyl thing is coming back. I just bought a record player this year, and I'm all into it.
Yeah.
I had no idea the CDs were also making a comeback.
The company I use in Nashville, I think I get my CDs for like a little over $2.
Okay.
And I turn around and sell them for 10. So that's
Yeah.
like almost a 5X,
Yeah.
But vinyl's about maybe a 2X, maybe
Yeah.
a little bit less.
Which is good, yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
it's good to have.
Yeah.
And, my record, I personally believe sounds best on vinyl.
Yeah,
So I think
that's neat.
for the listener, it's worth it.
For the music fans out there, your advice to them, what's the best way for them to actually support their favorite artists? Is it the Venmo support? Is it the merchandise combination?
The best way to support, and not even just on what's going to net me the most profit, but just what's going to net me the most satisfaction,
Yeah.
is something transactional, like buying my album, or maybe even hiring me to come and perform at like a house concert, those
Right.
kinds of things. I've had people before just give me a big old tip or something like that, and that's awesome. I
Right.
love that. But
Right.
sometimes it almost feels like they're doing it because they think that you're struggling, and it's like, well, I'm not, but I do appreciate that, and it's always from a place of love. But buying the music, listening to it, sharing it. I had a fan in Massachusetts who bought 30 copies of my CD and just gave it away to friends.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that was awesome.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
great.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff really means a lot to me.
The streaming platforms, it's great as a fan, right? Because it's all at your fingertips. It's just a way for you to get your art out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this stage, especially if you're an independent artist, streaming is just a marketing platform, and a lot of times you have to spend money to make money with streaming. Just like in the old days of payola and radio and things like that, there's Spotify playlist curators now who will charge you a fee to place your song on their playlist, and it's not as uncommon as you would think. They always want to tell you, oh, you're going to make it back in streams and stuff, but it doesn't always work out that way. But what it does, if you work with the right curators, you do get on lists that have organic listeners, and,
Right.
and it does end up growing your brand. And so I think there's just a give and take and a balance. And then also, paid advertising on things like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok is a really big way people are getting their reach out there these days.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for going through that. I guess I want to shift to, the music,
Yeah.
right, and your art. I'm still blown away, by the way, by this Songfinch concept.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
cool,
I'm
man.
like late to the game there, but that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, your music. So did you released an album last year, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's called Made for the Road, and I was releasing a slew of singles throughout the year, and then the full album dropped on September the 15th last year.
Oh, that's awesome. What has music meant to you in your life?
Well, it certainly means more to me than the business analytics, I mean, most musicians aren't really the best
Right.
CEOs, but I think, honestly, my dad's a musician, and he got me into it early on, just the love of good music and playing the guitar. I started playing the guitar when I was a preteen, and I saw that he did it sort of semi-professionally. He was sort of a weekend warrior band guy. He was a lawyer by day and would play in rock bands on the weekends and stuff. And I saw him do that, and I was like, I wasn't even thinking about the money at first. I was like, I just want to do that. I just want to play in a band, So me and some buddies in high school put a band together. We started playing, and right about the time that was getting serious, I found out about my eye condition, my diagnosis. And I think in that moment, I know actually, God spoke to me, and it was sort of a realization of, you've been met with this challenge, but here's something that you'll never be hindered by your vision to do, and that's to play and sing. And so it really just catapulted me into getting real serious about making that my living and making that my job. And so I started gigging all the time, and that's what I did all the way through college. I never had a real job. The only real job I ever had was in the middle of COVID for about 6 months. I got a little remote computer job because there was nothing to do,
man. Right.
But that was it, man.
Yeah.
That's the only job I've ever had is music. And so I just continued to try to find new ways to make it work. But the art has inspired that. And I wrote my first song when I was probably 16, and I just remember the high that I got from that. And then hearing my first song played by a band, and then hearing my first song recorded, and then hearing my first song on the radio, like all those things. It never gets old,
That's incredible. And for the audience, you're legally blind, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has that changed or affected your, again, the songwriting? There's obviously lots of different sources of material. Does it creep into that process?
Well, it does in its own way. I mean, I haven't yet. I'm not going to say that I don't, but I haven't yet really written a song about being blind or anything like that. But one of the things I always tell my co-writers that I do, and it's really out of necessity, because I'm not able to read handwriting on a page or anything. I am able to use some accessibility functions through my phone and computer and stuff. But what I typically do when I'm creating songs is I'll write something down, and then as quickly as I write it down, I try to recall it in my own mind. And it's because I can't read it, So, and what I think it does is it refines my lyrics to just be more memorable, because you have to remember it right now. And so I think a lot of songwriters, they write something on the page and then they're instantly married to it, whereas to me, I write something down and then I have to recall it. And typically when I recall it, I actually recall something that's slightly different, but maybe a better option.
Oh, it's better. Yeah. Yeah. So it puts a little bit more finer sort of touch on the process.
I think it just forces my brain to work a little bit more, and it forces it to get more and more efficient.
Right.
I want my songs to be memorable.
Right.
And if I can't recall it in the next second, then maybe it needs to be rethought a little bit.
Right. So you're from Alabama, right?
Yes. Roll Tide.
there you go.
We love you, Coach Saban.
Yeah, big news on Saban this week. I've been to a lot of shows the last couple of years. I live in Atlanta, so that there's a lot happening in Atlanta. Everybody comes through there. I think one of the most memorable performances I've seen in the last 2 years since moving there was at Eddie's Attic, the Blind Boys of Alabama.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll never forget that, because the group has been around for 70 years, and the members come and go, but they've got the band going, and they make their entrance, and they have their hands on their shoulders going up on stage, and then obviously they sing. It's beautiful. The joy in that whole experience, I thought to myself, like, that's the power of music.
Sure.
It's like we all have challenges.
Right.
Whether they're self-inflicted, whether they're, from whatever, and to see them do what they did for 2 hours, I was like, this is what music's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak to my own experience, but I bet you it's the same for them. Like, when you do something well, particularly if you have a disability, but you're able to do something very well and people respect you for it, it just fulfills you, and it just makes you feel like you're providing a meaningful contribution to the greater society, the greater culture, and I think sadly, there's a lot of people out there who struggle with disabilities that haven't found that avenue for themselves yet, and they might feel like, I don't have anything to offer, And as a musician, whenever I play shows, I always talk about how, like, I'm not able to drive a car, but because of music, I've traveled the world, and that is God. That is the power of fate, and the power of a story, and the power of just living life to the fullest, and finding ways to do the things that you really want to do. And people, I don't want to say people are inspired by me, but I mean, they connect with that idea, because everybody has a story. Everybody has something they chased after in their lives. And when you get it, when you find it, it just empowers you. It empowers you to keep going.
Right. I believe that every musician has a mission, whether they kind of know it, just, kind of explicitly or not. Do you think you have a mission?
Yeah, I mean, I think my mission has always been the same. The mission is really just to have a life that I am proud of. One of my late professors, Robert W. Smith, has been a huge mentor to me. He just passed away, but he always said, I don't have a job, I have a life. And that's how I've always wanted to feel, and that's how I do feel. I wouldn't be of that mindset if it weren't for people like him.
Right. How important is your faith?
It's very important. I've written some faith-based songs, but I just carry my faith around with me, and I try to be, especially when I'm in the view of the public eye or anything, I definitely try to just be the type of person that other people will gain something from, and I'm not an evangelist. I don't necessarily think that is the best methodology of spreading the word of God.
Right. The podcasts that I'm doing, like I said, it's a passion project. It was inspired by the television show Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much you watched that, but curiosity was a big component of that.
Uh-huh.
And then this idea of being a goldfish, which is all about, forgetting what happened a minute ago, 2 minutes ago, in an effort to move forward and be positive, right?
Sure.
So when it comes to curiosity, what are you curious about?
That's awesome. Self-development, I think, is the best way I can say that. I've always enjoyed consuming literature or videos or, listening, having conversations with others about how we can be the best versions of ourselves. I've never been that interested in fiction, I've always really been interested in just becoming a better version of myself, but a way you already are your best version of yourself. You just have to be aware of that and be present. And so I've gotten a lot out of authors like Eckhart Tolle, if you've ever heard of The Power of Now.
Right.
That book changed my life. Books on just how to be a person who has a life of affluence, to be a person who doesn't want for anything but has what they need. I'm always curious for people who have insight or share that passion. I always want to get inside someone else's head and just see what works for them and how they are their best self.
That's great. So it's January 2024. 2023 is a big year for you. What are your goals for the rest of this year and beyond? I think I read somewhere where one day you want to be on stage or tour with Driving and Crying. They're playing here tonight.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be able to find them and make that happen?
I'd love to. Absolutely. Those guys are awesome. Kevin Kinney and the rest of the group they're great musicians. Opening for a larger act is always something that's on the docket. It's
Sure.
it's always a goal. I did a lot of touring last year. I actually ended up running myself into the ground. I struggled with a little bit of vocal issues last year. I had to cancel about a month's worth of my tour dates. I had to go to a speech therapist and figure out what I was doing incorrectly and fix that. And I'm back to 110% now, so that's
Perfect.
great. But
Perfect.
this year, I think my biggest goal is to sow my seeds around Nashville, to co-write with people who are exactly where I want to be as a songwriter. And I do think that is the fastest track to getting those opportunities like you're talking about. If you write a song with one of the guys in Driving and Crying as an example, and they love it, and even if they don't cut it, but still you now have a relationship, and they might say, "Hey, Wyatt, I really like you, man, and we want to bring you out on the road and let's do some of that," And so I think that's how that stuff happens. It's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to make great songs, but the relationships and the result of that is a great perk.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Good luck this year.
Thank you.
And I would love if you played a couple songs.
I'd love to, man. Let's
right.
do it. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thanks, Wyatt. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
I wrote this one for my soon-to-be wife, and when we were just kind of about a year into our relationship, I think. And it's just a song about when you find somebody that is really there for you in all of life's moments. It's sort of like the shelter from the storm, no matter what, no matter what the weather is. And so this one's called Shelter. I was all alone in the dark. Swore I wouldn't let down my guard for anyone, but now I just ache for your touch. I never thought I'd need you this much, but
but you're my shade in the sun. You're my sun in the rain. You're my rain in a drought, the one I can't live without. You're my shelter. You're my shelter. It's the way you call out my name. You put my old fortress to shame. Yeah, you knocked it down. And I find myself laughing like hell. And I realize if I'm with you, heaven must be real. 'Cause you're my shade in the sun. You're my sun in the rain. You're my rain in a drought, the one I can't live without. You're my shelter. You're my shelter. So let the rains come down and the floods cover the ground. There's nothing our love won't stop. We built this house on a rock in whatever weather. Honey, you're my shelter. You're my shade in the sun. You're my sun in the rain, a drop of rain on my tongue. You keep me forever young. You're my shade in the sun. You're my sun in the rain. You're my rain in a drought, the one I can't live without. You're my shelter. My shelter. This one's not released, but I wrote it with my friend Sarah Peacock, who I met here, I think maybe my second year here at the festival, and we've become really, really close friends. And yeah, Sarah, she's going to be playing tonight. I think she's just getting into town today. But I got this idea when I was on an airplane. I get a lot of ideas on airplanes. I don't really know why, but it's something about being 30,000 feet in the air, you know. And I heard some guy talk to his friend, and he was like, man, if I ever try to do that again, just tell me no before I even start, you know. And I don't know what they were talking about, but I just heard that phrase, tell me no, and I was just like, oh man, there's something there. So I wrote down a little chorus on the plane, and then Sarah and I put the song together, and it has not been recorded, but I'm getting ready to record it. And anyway, it's called Tell Me No. You're doing, I'm not strong, I'm weak. You got me searching for something I know I don't need. The angel in you brings out the devil in me, and I could lose everything. So tell me no, don't get too close. I've got a good woman waiting at home. It's just my sin, tonic and gin, that bends me into a person I don't even know. So turn and go, and tell me no. You might think it's forever or just for a good time. I'm trying to hold it together together and not cross that line. Don't wanna wake up tomorrow shaking off tonight. Yeah, we both know it ain't right. So tell me no, don't get too close. I've got a good woman waiting at home. It's just my sin, tonic and gin, that bends me into a person I don't even know. So turn and go and tell me no. Tell me not to throw away the only good I've got. Don't let me be the monster that I know I'm not. Just let me walk away and follow my heart home. And tell me no. Just tell me no. Tell me no. Don't get too close. I've got a good woman waiting at home. It's just my sin, tonic and gin, that bends me into a person I don't even know. Turn and go. Tell me no. It's just my sin, tonic and gin, that sends me down a broken road with a bitter end. Turn and go. And tell me no.
Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Curious Goldfish. Please follow and subscribe to the podcast and on social media. Also, tell your music-loving friends about us too. Until next time, stay curious.